Schechter. I'm here on Bebop Talks Cancer. I'm here with Michael Cramer, and we're just gonna talk about cancer, I guess. Michael, what's up?
Yeah,
How are you?
I'm chilling. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So,
Good to hear. Good to hear.
best way to start this is like, who are you, and can you tell me a bit about your cancer story?
Yeah, so as you said, my name is Michael Cramer. Before I was diagnosed, I was a surfer, windsurfer, skater. I was a model when I was younger. I traveled the world, doing windsurf competitions. I was blonde, I was tan, I loved the gym. I was just living in the water. Like the water
Hmm.
was my life. Like I was just natural with it, and it was just everything to me. And then around 2020, it was 2020 when COVID kind of became a thing, and we were all in quarantine. The first quarantine, I know there's multiple. Um, I was feeling pretty tired, and I was like, well, I'm just not seeing my friends. It's probably because the
Just
beaches are
COVID
closed.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, COVID just sucks. And I would work out with my friend. We'd go to his house and work out because I think everyone had a COVID buddy. Let's be honest.
Hmm.
And we would work out, and I started to get really tired. And then the gyms opened a few months later, and I went to the gym. I remember one morning I went to the gym and I threw up, and I was like, "What? I would never throw up." And then I started to get night sweats. I was unable to keep up with my friends in the gym. I was getting fevers. I was really tired. I started to lose weight, and I was like, "Something's wrong. I think I have COVID." So I waited like a week. Nothing changed. I didn't really feel better or anything. And then my mom was like, "You know what? We're gonna talk to your doctor, do like a telehealth because we don't want to go in person just because COVID's everywhere. It's still a weird time." And we did that. We did the telehealth. She was like, "Oh, you look fine. You look great. Like, you
Hmm.
sound fine. Nothing's wrong with you." And then I went. The beaches opened in North Florida. I'm from Florida, from Miami
Hmm.
actually. And we went surfing up in North Florida on a beach called New Smyrna Beach, and it was great. I felt amazing, and then I came home, and then I felt exhausted, night sweats and fevers again. And then I was like, all right, I need to go do some blood work. So I did blood work. I didn't think anything of it. She said I looked fine, and the labs came back like 3 days later. And I was actually on the way to my friend's house to help him move some stuff because he was moving stuff to from an older house to a new house. And then my mom calls me like, "Hey, the blood work came back, and your doctor wants you to go meet a doctor at this hospital because he specializes in blood, and your blood work's a little funky." I was like, "Oh, really? We have to go?" And I was like, "Whatever, we'll go." So with my
Hmm.
mom, we went to Nicholas Children's Hospital, met with the hemoc oncology doctor there, and did labs. And he's like, "Well, your labs are a little funky. Do you want to stay the night and do a bone marrow biopsy?" And I was like, "I'm not staying the night in the hospital. Why would I spend the night in the hospital? I'm fine." And then we came back the next day. I was thinking nothing of cancer, by the way. Like
Sure,
he said,
sure.
bone marrow biopsy,
That's
and
like
then
that's way too serious. And like they came back a little funky. You're gonna need a biopsy. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
and then
and those words are scary. I mean, those words. It's like you're not a scientist. You're not a doctor. What
I
are
didn't
these
know anything.
words? You're
I
right.
didn't know those words at all. But the funny thing is, I did not think anything serious. Like I wasn't scared because I don't know why. I just didn't understand anything. I was just like, whatever. We
Hmm.
came back the next day. I was just scared of going under anesthesia for the first time.
Never
I'd
been
never,
under anesthesia.
yeah,
Wow.
never in my life. I was really scared. And we did the, I did the biopsy. I woke up kind of back in the room. Like I got taken back to my room after, I was super groggy. You wake up groggy. You're like, and then the doctor walks in, and the first thing I hear him say is like, leukemia, lymphoma, treatable. I'm like, what? Like my world just like turned upside down in
Hmm.
like 1 second. And the next thing I knew, I was being taken up to the sixth floor, which is the oncology unit,
Hmm.
and got a port in the next day, and they were like, "We're going to start you on chemo,"
Hmm.
but they didn't know the exact cancer I had, so they didn't start me on chemo. They were just giving me blood transfusions because my blood counts were low, my hemoglobin was low, and they were monitoring me, and I was getting pretty sick, so they put me on prednisone, a steroid,
Hmm.
and I stayed there for about a week, not knowing my diagnosis, still nothing. And they sent me home after a week on prednisone and told me to come back in a week for another biopsy, like another one, just to
Hmm.
see. So I came back, did another one, and they still didn't know what it was. And then they're like, okay, well, we're narrowing it down now. So then they
Hmm.
told me to come back in 2 weeks. I came back in 2 weeks and they had the official diagnosis. And I walked into the room with my mom to talk to the doctor. He was like, what you have is called hepatosplenic T cell lymphoma. Do not Google it. That's the first thing he said. Thankfully, it was a children's hospital, and the doctors aren't like, oh, this is your chance of survival. Because I know that I've had a lot of friends who were treated at adult hospitals, and the doctors straight up say, this is your chance of survival.
Right, right.
They didn't tell me anything. They're just like, you know what, we're just gonna do chemo. You have to have a bone marrow transplant, and that was all
Hmm.
I knew. I had to get into remission and get a transplant. That was all I was told.
And for context, how old are you now?
So I'm 21,
And
but I
how
was
old were
19
you
at the
then?
time.
Right.
I was 19, so I just turned 19. This was in. I was diagnosed on August 3rd of 2020.
Hmm. And now,
That's when I,
just to take it back real quick, you were August 3rd, 2020. You were diagnosed. When you started having those fevers and the sweats, when was that? What was the time period between I've got some
I'd say
symptoms
that was
to
like from April to July.
wow?
It was for a bit. Like the
Hmm.
fever started more in July, but the night sweats were from April. Like I had them for a while.
And you just think, I mean, I know because my experience was it was about 2 months between a symptom and actually like getting my butt to the doctor. But like,
Yeah,
like, or like being like, okay, it's not this, it's not that, like Tylenol's not working or whatever. But like,
yeah.
um, you know, and so it's so that period of time is so interesting because before we go too far into like all of a sudden you knew, like there had been just real quick, what was that experience like of when you when you knew, like you had just spent these months dealing with symptoms, and then I think it's important for a lot of people, there's that thing doctors say, right, like you have cancer. Like what was that experience like for you to hear those words?
So obviously it was shocking
Hmm.
because when I heard leukemia slash lymphoma, my father passed away from lymphoma. So first it was like a huge thing, like oh shit, like this is real. And but also I was a little like okay, it makes sense because like in the gym, I was so like tired, and I talked to my friend when I was first diagnosed, and I was like, well, you know what? That's why I couldn't keep up with you because I had cancer, bro.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was shocking, but I feel like I took it really well. But it hit me like it didn't really hit me until after my first round of chemo because it was so fast. Everything was so quick. I
Hmm.
didn't have time to process it, and it really just hit me after the first round of chemo.
And maybe you could speak to that too. And it's funny because I do these interviews with people, and I'm just like remembering that I was told those words, you have cancer, within the next 7 days. I had the next 9 months of my life was scheduled. And
Yeah, sure.
and it's like, so you get told you have cancer, and how soon was it until your first chemo session?
Well, I was told I had cancer, and then they couldn't figure out the cancer, so it took them 3 weeks, like I
That's
said.
right.
And
Mm-hmm.
then once they figured out what it was, I started chemo right away, like right away. They told me what it was, and I was admitted to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was because the cancer I had is super like aggressive, so they had to do the most intense like pediatric treatment because
Mm-hmm.
pediatric treatment is actually the most intense out of all chemos because when you're young, your organs can take all that stuff, but if you're older,
Mm-hmm.
you can't take the most intense treatment. So the kids actually get the hardest treatment, believe it or not.
What does that
So,
mean?
well, it just means
Well,
that
just yeah, like you know.
there's certain chemos that adults like can't tolerate
Mm-hmm.
because their organs are older and they would cause more damage. But kids, they
I see.
regenerate because, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so the pediatric treatment, there's certain chemos that I was able to get that would help me get into remission faster than
Mm-hmm.
say like an adult who's in his 40s had the
Yeah.
same cancer as me. There's certain like there's a chemo called PEG that I got, and adults can't get it, but I got it because I was 19, and that's one of the experimental chemos that I got, and I was in
Mm-hmm.
remission. And I think after 3 cycles of chemo, and I think it was because my doctor added that one.
Right.
So it's very interesting.
And now, so knowing a little bit about your story, but to kind of give context to where you are today, you had told me previously about something that happened with your liver. Um, in the process of, was it during chemo or was it in remission? Or and also,
Well,
could you talk a little bit more about? I'm not even going to say the name of the cancer because I'm going to mess it up, and this whole community is going to roast me.
hepatosplenic
So
T-cell lymphoma. Yeah,
yeah, I'll get it at some point. Like
we'll get
I'm
it.
going to
Yeah,
say it. Yeah, and it's like people trying to say my name. At a certain point, I'm like, oh, you tried, and I
yeah,
appreciate
I
that.
know. Yeah, I would
You
mess your
know,
name up. I'm not gonna lie.
it's all good. So can you talk, I guess, a little bit more about that? Like what it is, what you know about it, because it is so rare, and then also about that experience you had that you had told me about before with your liver. I don't exactly remember.
Yeah, I'll talk about that. So, hepatosplenic T-cell lymphoma is a cancer that's like incurable without a transplant. So you can
Hmm.
get chemo all you want and get it into remission with chemotherapy, but it will come back 100% of the time. So that's why I had a stem cell transplant because I needed it. And if I didn't have a stem
Hmm.
cell transplant, the cancer would come back for sure. The only chance of getting the cancer to be cured and into remission, like long term, is with a transplant because I'm given a whole new bone marrow, a whole new immune system.
Hmm.
So the cancer hopefully won't come from that immune system. That's the whole idea of a transplant. And that's why this cancer, the thing about this cancer and why it's so fatal and so many people pass away from it is because it's very hard to diagnose because it's not common. So it's oftentimes misdiagnosed and people diagnose it too late and they don't start treatment. So they usually pass away within the first few months. The average lifespan is
Hmm.
8 months since you're diagnosed with this cancer. It's very low. It's a very bad prognosis. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what there is to be said about this cancer. It's not very common. You need a transplant for sure, and you do anything you can to get it into remission. There's no protocol. Like for a lot of cancers, like there is a protocol treatment that is written down in the textbook, what to
Right.
give, what to do. But this one is just like do whatever you can to get into remission, get a transplant, and hope you live.
Hmm. And
That's
that's
the
why
whole.
I think people don't maybe understand in some ways why there's. I remember for me is like my lymphoma had, like you said, like there's a protocol. If we follow
Right.
this protocol and your body accepts it, you're going to be okay. And then there's this whole clinical trial side. And people
Yeah.
talk about why clinical trials are important. And it's like, well, they're important because we don't know. We don't know exact. There isn't, like you said, there's no protocol. And because of the way it is, it's misdiagnosed or diagnosed too late. Um,
Yeah.
I can't cuss on here. I always want to cuss. I always forget that I shouldn't do it, but it's like, damn, like it's so intense, you know.
It
It's
is,
like,
yeah.
so. There's my chair. How do you cope with the intensity of all of you're 21? You know, you used to surf and travel, and like obviously, like you've done. I mean, it's like an amazing job of creating a network of talking to people, of communicating your story. But I've got to imagine. I mean, it would be on anybody's mind. Like, how do you deal with the intensity?
I think that's how I deal with it. It's like creating this network and talking to people and trying to make myself feel normal. Because
Mm-hmm.
there is nobody, none of my friends have cancer, or let alone have had this cancer or been through anything that I have been through. So when it comes to my friend group and the people that are around me, I'm obviously very different and very alone in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, I've had my mom and my brother and my sister and my grandma and all my family and my grandfather too. They're
Mm-hmm.
super great to me, and they live, like, my grandparents live very close to me, so I see them all the time, and I feel like my family, definitely for sure, because it's hard. It's very hard because
Yeah.
not that many people understand what it's like. But having the right people around you, and I also think I've been pretty active. Like, I have weights and I do workouts like every day. Not heavy, you know, 10, 11 pounds, whatever, but it makes me feel
Mm-hmm.
normal. And I guess doing things that make me feel normal like that
Yeah.
helps.
Well, and that's a whole thing. I mean, people ask me about Bebop, and sometimes I tell them, like, my real goal is just to communicate the fact that, like, yes, you have a cancer experience. A mom has a cancer experience. A grandfather, a grandparent, watches their grandkid go through this. Like, but what needs to be communicated is that you're having a human experience.
Right.
It's this is, and you're not working out with cancer. You're working out, and you happen to have can. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Right, right.
you know, and it's. I mean, it's definitely strange, and sometimes can be so uncomfortable. But I think it's, again, it's amazing the work that you've done to communicate these things. And you know, it's so interesting to hear you talk about hepat the kind of cancer you have, because
Hepatosplenic lymphoma.
I have to like write it in front of me just so I'll get it at some point. But like it's because in some ways, like, you become an expert,
Yeah,
like, like, and I don't think a lot of people get that, like, especially for the more rare kind of cancer, like, you are at the forefront of this. And kind of to segue out of, like, specifically cancer talk, like, I'm gonna ask an interesting question. So what are some, like, and I guess I know this, you lived at a hospital for 5 months.
yeah.
Like, you lived at a hospital.
Well, I didn't live there. I was just admitted, So basically,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, you were living. I mean,
I
how do
had,
you say,
yeah.
like,
I spent the last two Christmases in the hospital, you
well,
know. Yeah,
it's pretty gnarly. I mean, like, when you think, like, when I was hearing that about your story, and like I was just sitting there and we were talking, I was like, in the hospital, like, so you were in a hospital room, same room, for 5 months.
yeah,
So you must know all of the bad aspects of a hospital room. Like,
yeah.
what in a hospital room sucks?
It's just a bed with a TV, and
Mhm.
that's it in the bathroom.
Was there Roku or anything?
Oh no, we had stuff. Like,
Okay, so yeah.
when you first get admitted, you don't have anything. But then, like, my mom would go home and get stuff, and then my brother would come in and bring stuff, and you
Mhm.
know, because you're there for so long. You end up making it your home. You have
Yeah.
everything there. We brought like so much stuff from home. Computers, computer chargers, phone
Hmm.
chargers. Of course, like, we had some little weights, like just 3 pounds. We brought
Hmm.
boxes of Legos. Like, when we would leave the hospital, we would leave with suitcases because we had so
Wild.
much stuff.
Just
We brought
stuff.
suitcases because at the end it would get admitted because I'd probably be sick, and we drive to the
Hmm.
ER with nothing. Just we'd be in a rush because I'd be really sick, like with a fever or vomiting or just
Hmm.
in extreme pain. And then we'd get there with nothing, and then as we stayed longer and longer and longer, like my mom would go home, get stuff, my brother would bring stuff, my sister would bring stuff, and eventually, we had 2 suitcases full of stuff in the
Hmm.
hospital.
What is your biggest complaint about the design of a hospital room, or is your biggest complaint the lack of design? Like, lack of things to help you. I like when I was in chemo, we had to lug around. I'm not. I know there's a medical term for it, but I've been calling it the cancer pole. But that can't possibly be what it is. Or like the chemo pole. Like
It's just a pole.
like
Just call it a pole.
just a pole. The pole with
Yeah,
wheels. Like what
an
were
IV.
some of the like annoying little nuances of the hospital? Because I feel like you have such an insight to be a patient for that long.
Honestly, it's just being in a hospital. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know how to make it better. I don't know. Like, the hospital where I was at was pretty good, actually.
Hmm.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, the Nicholas Children's where I was admitted,
Shout out to
there's
Nicholas Children's.
yes, they're actually very well, designed in there actually. Like when
Hmm.
you walk around the unit, there are pictures of they're like they're like photographers took pictures of like animals, and
Hmm.
there's like pictures all around the walls. Like actually, it's very very good that hospital, but I don't know. My main complaint was the food.
The
Horrible,
food. The
so
food.
bad, so bad. Like
I'm
they
smiling. So it's I love this. I love knowing the. I mean, the food. How bad was the food?
it's so bad. It's like the food was frozen for 10 years and then they just put it in the
Hmm.
microwave and give it to you.
And like you, again, you live there. You or like you were admitted for an extended period of time. Like you had to eat this food quite often.
I know it. And thankfully, a family donated some Uber Eats gift cards to us at one point. So
Nice.
for dinner every night, we would order out, but you still ate breakfast
Hmm.
and lunch there. And a lot of
The
the time, dinner
food.
too, because you couldn't order Uber Eats every night, but still, it's just the food is just horrible. That's like the biggest complaint is I'd say the food and maybe the beds. The hospital
What was wrong
beds
with
are
the bed? Hospital beds suck.
yeah, they
That.
just suck. We're not
Hmm.
comfortable. They could definitely make them better.
What would make the hospital bed better? Is it
Give us
like
like a give us a Tempur-Pedic mattress or something. Come on.
something with a little bit? I think I've thought about like the personal pillow. Like everybody, you could tote around your own pillow and like have a Tempur-Pedic pillow or something like that. Because I know the bed. For me, it was the chair. Like the chair I was in was so uncomfortable. I mean, I'm a pretty big person, so like just being in that chair. But it was only I think about the differences in experiences. Like for me, it was 8 hours a day, but sometimes like you're in that bed a lot. You have to be, and that experience. And so you went to two different hospitals. You went to Nicholas, and then there was. Did you were at the pediatric hospital the whole time, or wasn't there was another
Um,
hospital?
yeah, there's another hospital. I was usually admitted at the pediatric hospital,
Mm-hmm.
but the other hospital I went to, University of Miami,
Mm-hmm.
Sylvester Cancer Center. They have a cancer center, University of Miami, and I did. I'm doing treatment there for my
Hmm.
GVHD, which is a graft versus host disease, which is the complication after my transplant, where the
Hmm.
donor stem cells attack your organs. So it kind of realizes your body is like foreign. It's foreign.
Hmm.
So it attacks you because it's like, well, this isn't me. So that's the complicated part of transplant. So it's really confusing. It probably makes no sense to you. But to
It's
me,
just
that's
like
what
it's
I'm
so
an expert on.
yeah. It's just so wild, man. It's so wild. I mean, to hear your story and to think about like all the things that go on and like I think it's so tough when you say things about like the food or the beds because from like the standpoint about what makes these conversations so hard is that when it comes to the medical things, it's like there's no right thing to say to somebody, right? I mean,
There's
it's
not.
even if you like people say like to me, they're like, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Shit, I'm sorry." It's like I don't know what to say, and I've had cancer, and I know it's like there's no right thing to say, but
Yeah,
it's so
there's not.
frustrating when I think about the financial toll of cancer, even if you have insurance,
Oh, it's
like
insane.
to hear the food or the bed or the clothing, and I do want to segue, and I use that term probably too much, but there's a story about socks that you told me, and
Yeah.
I was a big thing that I want to talk about is Bebop. We're trying to get into murals. I think we've spoken before about how hospitals need color, they need design, they need these things. But the most iconic piece of hospital clothing, other than maybe the smock or whatever that is the socks. And so you have a story about the power of special socks,
Oh,
right?
yeah. So I was in the waiting room for a bone marrow biopsy, and it's like the minor procedures suite. And when you're
Mm-hmm.
waiting there, you're just separated by curtains to the other patients. And I was wearing these
Mm-hmm.
socks, and I was probably sitting on the edge of the bed. And it's a pediatric hospital, and I'm 6'1", 6'1". So my feet were hanging out for sure. And the kid next to me and his dad
Mm-hmm.
noticed my socks. I was wearing these stance socks. I don't remember exactly what they were, or they were rip and dip. I can't
Shout
ever
out to
remember.
our two conceptual sponsors, Rip and Dip and Stance Socks.
I wish. I
Like,
would. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it was one or the other. I think it was Rip and Dip, and there's a big cat
Mm-hmm.
on it. The cat would flicking everybody off, and the
Mm-hmm.
dad noticed them, and he's like, "Those are some really cool socks." And we got into a whole conversation about socks, and it was just this beautiful moment between us. And
Mm-hmm.
after that, he was like, "You're the first other patient we've talked to in the hospital," and he was really inspired by me and how I was able to talk to them. And we were both having biopsies at the same time. His kid was having one, and I was about to have one. And
Mm-hmm.
after that, they created a whole um, project called Oliver Patch Project, and they make these sweatshirts that are, I forgot like these, the jean sweatshirts that have like,
Yeah.
what are they called?
It's a jean jacket. They're
Yeah, like a
like
jean jacket.
motorcycle jackets, like
Yes, and they have patches on them.
patches.
And
Yeah.
because he met me and
Mm-hmm.
was like inspired that I was wearing this crazy stuff in the hospital and able to have a sense of humor with, the hospital, he
Mm-hmm.
made them. They started making them and giving them to other cancer patients. And it was just this crazy connection because the socks made a friendship forever in the
Right.
hospital and made it so that they wanted to give these jean jackets to other patients
Mm-hmm.
so that
To
they can
to
have something.
recreate those scenarios. I mean, it's like it's
Yeah, exactly. They
uh,
wanted it so that kids in the hospital have this these fun jackets to walk
Hmm.
around in and feel special because they're going through something that they shouldn't have to go through.
And that's what's so like, I don't know if funny is the right word, but that's what's so funny is like it's a human experience. Like we don't have to just relate, I'm in the hospital, you're in the hospital. We must both be kind of sick. Like we can relate
Yeah,
to other things, and that's what makes it tough with like if there's not sports on the TV, if there's not art on the wall, if there's not something funny to break the ice, like the fact that like I can agree sort of and attest to the same thing. Like most of my hospital experiences, I didn't talk to anybody except nurses. And you kind of like all the other patients, like, we would make like little side comments to each other, but it was never like relationship building. Now, do I need more friends? I don't know. That's the whole nother conversation. But do like, are we kind of starving for attention that doesn't directly have to do with cancer? I think, or being sick, and I think even if we don't admit it, it's such a big part of breaking that ice, and then just being able to not feel like it's just a cancer experience, but
yeah,
again, like a relatable experience. And it's so silly, like a cat flicking someone off. That's that's all it takes. It doesn't take, you know, a PowerPoint, to say like, "Hi,
no,
I'm
not at
Michael."
all.
Like
Exactly, yeah, that's so true.
so. You're 21. You've got, I mean, an amazing story and life ahead of you. And I'm sure you hear all sorts of things in that nature. Um, I'm thinking about like, you know, what is something that you would say to someone when they hear those words? Like, you've got cancer, and somebody relating that to their family. And I know you have an incredibly supportive family, at least it's visible through your social media and whatnot. But how would you communicate to somebody, um, you know, who has just been told they've been diagnosed?
That it's so hard
Hmm.
because you never, even now, I don't even really, no one really knows what do you say.
Right.
What I would say is, listen, I'm gonna be there for you. I'm gonna talk to you, and it's gonna suck. Like I'm just gonna be honest with you. It's gonna suck,
Hmm.
but I went through it, and I feel that I'm a greater person, and I've learned so much because I went through it. And that's really the best thing I could say, is because everyone reacts to chemo differently. Everyone reacts to treatment differently, and people have different situations with their support
Hmm.
system. And I know people who have amazing support systems, and I know people who've had not so great support systems, and they reacted to their diagnoses differently. Some people
Hmm.
reacted to it like, oh my god, like I am supposed to be in college right now partying, but instead I am in the hospital with cancer. And some people reacted to it like, okay, um, I have cancer, I have to take a break from my life right now and just focus on my health.
Hmm.
And I think that what I would tell someone is, listen, it's not about what happens to you, it's how you're going to react to it. And you have to choose that for yourself, because it's going to suck. And you're going to see. The best advice I can say is, listen, you're going to learn as you go through it.
Hmm.
I can tell you everything. I can tell you all my side effects, how I coped with it, but you're going to become the expert because you're going to go through it.
Right. Like
That's
you,
that's what I would
like, I guess a good way to say that is like you're going to become the expert on you.
say.
And
Exactly. Yeah.
mhm. So to kind of like you know give context to the listeners, like in some ways, like what is Bebop and why is Bebop doing this and all these things, and what is our goal, is to collect stories to create these relatable opportunities, because so important is dialogue. just literally saying how you feel sometimes is the difference between a good day and a bad day, a good week, a bad week, so on and so forth. And like, um, but a big part of what, you know, we want to do is also in the functional design space. So I was wondering, are there any like functional materials, or like, did you feel like, you know, talk about like clothing with port access, or, you know, the fact that you're, I think we could say ass on YouTube. I think we could say ass. If not, I've got some editing to do. But the fact that like, you know, that's the smock thing or whatever, like doesn't cover the back, or like there's so many strangely awkward clothing items that they give you. I mean, it's, you know, I don't know if there is any experience that you had, or just um, any uncomfortabilities in those arenas, or like, is it?
Yeah,
I I say like it's tough to get dressed sometimes. What do I
yeah,
wear to
yeah.
this event?
It's very tough. I've had drains before, and I've had two drains, and one of them was inserted right above, like right where my stomach is, and into my liver, and that's in a
Hmm.
really uncomfortable area. So when you're putting on your clothes, it's just like super annoying. And then when your port is accessed, putting on a shirt, you have to, put the line through your shirt, and it's so uncomfortable. And then you're
Hmm.
given gowns sometimes when you have to do a procedure or go do an MRI or whatever, and it's
Hmm.
very uncomfortable, very
A
uncomfortable.
gown. That's the word. Gown. You got me
Yeah.
there. Um, it's interesting you say that. Like, do you think that, other than from the medical standpoint, could the hospital provide more services, such as, you know, even feedback? I mean, I don't remember the hospital ever asking me, could we do this better or that better? I mean, do you think that there are creative services that hospitals could offer? Or do you think that there's a space for murals and imagery, and um, just like what the total vibe around it is?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, I've had the best experience ever. Like,
Hmm.
my hospital is amazing, and there's art therapy, there's music therapy,
Oh,
there's
wow.
stuff like that was offered, and there's like PT too,
Hmm.
and there's stuff like that in my hospital at Nicholas, and I think it's not like that at other hospitals though.
Hmm.
This is really a pediatric hospital thing, and I've seen it at adult hospitals, but I've been admitted to adult hospital once, and it was just not
Hmm.
the same. Like the room was ugly, it was small, it was just this. It was at University of Miami, and it was just this weird wood um like you see this wood behind me. It was like this on the wall, this and like gray was like their colors, and it was just so plain and so ugly. And it's
Hmm.
all over the hospital. Like that's their thing is like this type of wood. It's just everywhere, and it's not even wood. It's just like meant to look like wood. It's like probably
You're like,
plastic.
I know what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, like I know what's going on, and yeah, but I think where Nicholas is
Hmm.
great. Like what they have is amazing. That pediatric hospital, I've been so blessed to have such amazing people there, and
Yeah.
they've offered me so many things. There's so many resources there.
And I think that that's like, to that point. I mean, I don't think that that should stop at pediatrics. I mean, I think that those are, everybody could use those services,
I know
any
it's
age.
crazy. Yeah, because in the adult hospitals, it's such a difference.
Hmm.
Like the kid hospitals are all fun and everyone loves it, and it's a wonderful experience, even though it sucks. It's just
Hmm.
there's art everywhere. The walls are always colored, but then you go to the adult hospitals, and it's just like this. It's like these two colors right behind me, like that. That's it. That's all you
Hmm.
see everywhere. and it's the rooms are not nice. It's just there to work, not to make you
Yeah, and I
happy.
mean,
It's just to
it's like, what
work.
do you say? What do you when you're there? And that's the way I felt. Like I'm a patient, and there's really not much complaining I can do. I mean, it's kind of funny because like, so I have all this stuff with like F cancer on it, like the middle fingers and all
Mhm.
these things, and like popsicles are like my thing. The watermelon over there, like I would like
Mhm.
bring that pillow with me, and um, it's amazing. Like you said, your story with the socks is so reminiscent of things that have occurred in my experience where people notice those differences when all you've got is that brown and tan gray wall. Like
Yeah,
people notice the color. It becomes a special part of your experience and can sometimes be, when it comes to like some of my goals with Bebop, is like it creates that pause in between my cancer experience that brings me back to having like a positive human experience, and hope is tough. I mean, I hear your story and I just, I think I have an applause like thing I can do on these podcasts, but it's like, it's amazing, man. I mean, it's really the amount of hope and inspiration and your willingness to talk about it is, I think you and I have talked a little bit about men and cancer and how that the men's cancer community could be more vocal and just and the entire community is just so it needs this, it needs that kind of how you were saying it, like, you know what I would tell someone with cancer is it's gonna suck, but you know I'm doing okay. And I think that that
exactly.
is the
Yeah.
big that's the big thing is like people have asked me about someone asked me not long ago, it's like what was it like to have cancer. I was like, well, I was sick, and like sometimes I wasn't sick, and then sometimes I was sick, but like, and it all sucked. I wasn't expecting this, you know, but thankfully, you know, like it sounds like you have a great support system. I know you do. I had a great support system with my family. And that's where I feel like these creative services can also step in for people who don't have those support systems because their battle is super mental. And
Yeah, it is.
you know and it can be such a lonely experience. I mean, if no one's bringing you the suitcases of stuff,
Exactly.
then your hospital room is your dojo. And you know I really appreciate the fact that we can talk about this because I think that this is the next level, right? It's like
Yeah.
I know for so many people, like um and you've even said it to me before, like, you know even when you're in it, you're a survivor, you
Yeah.
know and being a survivor is you have a unique experience to something. And I think if we can do anything but promote, um hell, just like talking about it, and without a sense of like, um I don't want to talk about it, I'm embarrassed, because I get that all the time. Sometimes I also don't want to talk about it, like,
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had that, like, just give me my space. um
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I
And
definitely appreciate you doing this.
no, of course. And there was a movie I watched where I think it's called Bucket List on Netflix. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Jack
It's
Nicholson and Morgan Freeman.
yes,
Bucket
yes,
List. It's a
exactly.
it's a classic.
Isn't
It's a
it?
classic.
It's classic. And
It's classic.
Jack Nicholson, he's the one who owns the hospital.
Is
And
that I haven't seen it in a long time. I'm just
yes, so I watched it like a few months ago, and he's the one
okay.
who like owns all the hospitals, and he does the bare minimum for them.
Mm-hmm.
and they're really, really bad. Like it's so everything is bad in them. The design, the food, everything, because he makes it super cheap so that he can make more money. But then he
Mm-hmm.
ends up getting cancer and staying in the hospital with Morgan Freeman. And he's like, "What? Why is this so bad?" And it's kind of
I need to
like,
rewatch Bucket List.
you do, because it made me think of that, and I was just like, imagine if the people, I don't want to like say this and sound rude, but like, if the people who were making this were admitted and had the
Mm-hmm.
full experience, I'm sure they would change it.
Yeah,
Like any if a patient ever had to design a hospital or make the beds or had that job, they would change it.
that's
And I
powerful.
think that's exactly what I took from a part of that movie, besides the whole bucket list life is short type thing that the movie is really about. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's a beautiful movie, by the way. I loved it.
I haven't seen Bucket. I mean, I think I saw it, but again, like it's like what you're going through. If you're ready to hear it, I'm
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
gonna rewatch Bucket List.
yeah. When
Shout
I
out to
watched
Bucket
it,
List. Yeah,
I know. You should definitely rewatch it. It'll give you that perspective.
that's awesome. Um, yeah. So to kind of like talk about the final things that are going on, like you know, I guess before we get off now, what are some of your like goals now that you're 21, just to like push you on forward in life to talk about you for a second? Uh, what's like
Yeah.
where do you go from here? Where do you like what are your you've got a following on social? Are you going to stick with pushing in the cancer community? What
Yeah,
happens
of
next?
course. I
Hmm.
still, right now, I'm on Wednesday. I'm going back to treatment for my graft versus host disease. So it's
Hmm.
like this thing where I go to the hospital, I get hooked up to a machine through my port, and I sit there for like 4 hours in a bed. And I'm doing that for the next 3 months. So it's a 3 month
Hmm.
long treatment, twice a week. And I'm gonna be doing that, but I'm taking just one online class right now because I'm still busy with the hospital and still on a lot of meds and doing that treatment and stuff. So
You're
sorry to
doing an
like have.
online class for college
Yeah, yeah, just one.
during it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's just English, but I'm just doing it to keep myself like
Oh,
busy and distracted. But I want to be a
yeah.
nurse. Like when I'm,
Really?
yeah, I want to go to nursing school once I'm allowed to go back to school.
Hmm.
I want to go to nursing school.
Did Okay, so previous to cancer, did you ever think about being a nurse?
No way. I want to. No way at all. No way.
Really?
No,
No way.
no way.
And then just now, because I will tell you, like the biggest shock to my experience in cancer was like, oh, nurses are cool.
Yeah,
Nurses,
exactly.
they're the
Yeah,
best people in the world.
I
Like,
know.
so you, I think I understand, but why do you want to be a nurse? And yeah, why do you want to be a nurse?
It's just I've been a patient for so long, and nurses are always over my body, taking my blood, accessing my port, doing things to me, talking to me, comforting me, and being nice. And I want to do the same for somebody because they changed my life, and I want to change the patients' lives now. Like, I
It's
just want to be
amazing.
another side, and I feel like I can relate to the patients and I can help them and talk to them and be like, you know what, this is going to be hard, but I've done this, you can do it too. And I don't think a lot of nurses can say that. A lot of
Hmm.
nurses just tell me, "Oh, I'm sorry, it sucks," but I'll actually like know what the patients are going through.
Hmm.
I think I can help a lot of people. I just want to help people. That's really all I want to do now. That's why I do my TikToks, I do my podcasts, I do this. I try to connect other cancer patients.
Hmm.
I really have try to make a community here.
Hmm.
And that's
And
what I want to
you
do.
have a group. I can't remember the name of it.
A cancer survivor support group. Yeah.
Right. And so we'll plug as everywhere we go, we'll have all the links to socials, all the links to um, websites and support groups, and I just think that work is amazing. And
Yeah, it's
um,
great.
I know we could I could probably bend your ear for a long time on this, but I just really want to thank you for, and it's so cool. And for those who don't know, like I think we met over DMs within 30 days ago. You know, it couldn't
Yeah,
have been that long,
not
and we were working on a project with some art
exactly.
coming and podcasts, and I just think there's so much more to do, and so thank you so much. And
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you.
yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
For sure, for sure.
Cool. I'll see you later.
All right.
All
Later.
right, bye.
Bye.